you have an article that you just wrote, which is actually really good, and it's kind of fitting for this, this moment in time when we're looking at all of this stuff going on as far as shortages and droughts and heat and all this different stuff. So you have this article that you just wrote, seven best reasons why to be a prepper in 2022, and I wanted to go over a few of these because it's maybe not for the people that are listening to our show right now because they already are, a lot of them anyway. But for those people that are just kind of, maybe watching this video in the future for some reason, a lot of good things, good topics in this article. So we'll go through a few of them. Reasons why it just makes sense to be a prepper. And this is what I was talking about earlier with prepping has kind of gained in popularity because it just makes sense. I mean, it is not this extreme idea anymore. The first one you've got here, you can expand on this, but unexpected emergencies. What did you mean by this?
Well, I think at the basic level, if you're a prepper, you're prepared for a lot of basic stuff that happens. I mean, we were talking about before the show, right? The biggest meathead walking around today should be able to survive if all resources stop, should be able to live for at least, about 3 days, depending on water and the environment and all that. Mm-hmm. So being prepared and stocking up on a few things, having food so that way if you lose a job, and we talk about this all the time, right? If you lose a job, then you have some food that you can eat. You can extend your ability to not have to go get a job right away, or you can extend your ability to get by without a job, whatever the case may be. Being prepared for just unexpected stuff to happen. A fire at house, whatever it is, making yourself more resilient.
Yeah. And I'll bet you 90% of the people listening to this, watching this show, have at one point or another been happy, especially during the pandemic and all that stuff, been happy that they did have that food storage, and it wasn't some sort of doomsday event or something like that they had to use it with. It was just the fact that they had it in the first place. Made things a whole lot easier. Maybe you didn't have to go to the grocery store. Maybe you had a whole bunch of toilet paper, so that little thing you could just sit back and laugh at it and scratch your head and go, what the hell is that? But it's that unexpected stuff. Yeah, job loss is the big one. Income loss in general. Maybe somebody in your family moves out or something like that. Or just that, low income in the first place. And as you think about this stuff, as you do this stuff, it's just going to help you out no matter what happens down the line. The next one you've got on here that I wanted to talk about a little bit is helping others too, because I think preppers, we get that bad name, that recluse type thing, and that type stigma. We get talked about like that, but in actuality, if there is a disaster or something happens that like the pandemic is a good example, that we know there's going to be an end to it. We are more likely to help out in situations like that. You saw with the hurricanes and stuff like that, all sorts of preppers helping out, and down in New Orleans and stuff like that. You see preppers helping out. So there's that aspect of it, and as well as, and I think you had this in your article, but the fact that we need community. We can't go it alone. So if the more you're, and we've talked about this in the past, the more you're friends with your neighbors, the more you're going to know about them, and the more likely they're going to be able to help with what you're doing or what's going on.
Well, and I think it's just, why are you preparing? Are you preparing to be like the last person standing? Maybe. I mean, that might be your thing, and that's what people might be saying. I kind of think to be able to live like your best life possible, right? And part of living a good life and being a good person is helping others. I mean, you got family and friends who would do a lot for you, who may not be the most prepared people. But it doesn't mean they don't bring value to your life and they're not worth doing something. So what are you preparing for? You're a prepper. Maybe you're preparing a little something to help them. Like you plan on helping them. When you get to a certain level of preparedness, you're like, hey, I'm going to help, do some extra. So that way, if somebody comes or this person who doesn't prepare comes, then I should be good.
Yeah. And you're going to need the odds are you're going to need your neighborhood, because if you're talking about security and stuff like that, you can't be that one person in the neighborhood nobody likes. You just can't, or that nobody knows anything about, they're scared of, or whatever that is. Because if something happens and you're trying to fortify that neighborhood, it's going to take all of you.
Well, you shouldn't be a jerk, right? Like it doesn't matter what it is. You shouldn't be a jerk. I mean, that's just the thing. And everybody's going to rationalize, and you hear it in the prepper community a lot. People are going to rationalize why. Well, in that situation, it's okay to be a jerk. Maybe, it's just never okay to be a jerk. Maybe plan through some of that ahead of time. Maybe if you prepared a little bit, you wouldn't have to be such a big jerk.
Well, and if you are, it better be intentional. It better be thought out, I suppose, because there are some situations where you may be perceived as a jerk, but that's the only route that you feel like you can take. So, but
yeah. And we're not saying that like, hey, you don't have to make hard decisions and stuff. But I think one of the things when you're preparing, since none of us in our lifetimes have been hit with a doomsday or society-ending event, odds are there's a really good chance we will never experience that. Maybe. So therefore, most of the problems we have are just temporary, short-lived sort of disasters right now. That's all we've ever had in our lifetimes, most likely. And again, it could change. But if we keep going with what's happened in the past, odds are everything will, it'll be a short-lived disaster. So you should be able to be in a position to help other people. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that the people outside the preparedness community never give us credit for, right? That, hey, these people, they do that and they do help other people. Like you end up being a resource for a lot of people, possibly, depending on what your situation is.
Yeah. Those people go to like websites that I pulled up earlier, right? And they hoard all your food. You're going to need a year's worth of food. So that's what they think preppers are like. And like I said in the beginning, that's why I started Survivalist Preppers, because I was like, no, that is not what preppers are like. And I hate that stigma that's out there. And it has changed quite a bit since I've been doing this. Not because of me, just because of the industry. But
it's funny when you hear about it. It's like when you hear people talk about preppers from outside, when you media and stuff, it's like, oh, you bunch of God-fearing people that are self-reliant and all that stuff. And it's really like everything you're saying is like, oh, so they're nice people who, want to be able to provide for themselves and maybe even help others. Like they're that nice. That's what you're saying usually, right? So it's kind of funny. They say it in a way that they try to make it sound like it's something terrible.
Yeah. Like it's not, rational like it is. Like this whole list of things that you've got it's why it just makes freaking sense. This one right here you've got is, I'll go through both of these: economic disaster and failing infrastructure. That is something that one is kind of on the table right now, but when is it ever really off the table? Right? I mean, our infrastructure doesn't get fixed until something just completely goes to crap. And then they deal with the disastrous effects of that after it gets done. But nothing ever there's no foresight into all this.
Well, the problem with failing infrastructure is until they do something to get ahead of the problem, it's going to constantly be a problem wherever you're at, especially at least in the United States. I don't know how the infrastructure is everywhere else, judge what you have going in your own country. But we know that's a problem. And even worse, we know that we have a really fragile power grid, right? Like our power grid, if we get too much snow, it freezes. They're talking about freezes. Now they're talking about, rolling blackouts. You have the stuff with the Hoover Dam where not another 100 feet or something like that. They're going to be down where they're below the first two outlets that supply water and power to Arizona and California, for a lot of Arizona and California. And so you see these little things that are happening, like we talk about those compounding complex disasters. It's getting hotter. More people are turning air conditioners on. It's getting more people are moving into areas where it's getting hotter. So now you have even more people living there, right? So it's just compounding problems that we may see on an already strained, antiquated, not well-maintained infrastructure system.
Yeah. And you say it's kind of obvious. And I think that is it. One, yes, it's true. It should be obvious. But I think that's also a reason why preppers kind of get a bad name, because we do have that foresight. We look at this stuff and we pay attention to how bad or how the grid is pieced together and, basically duct tape and baling wire. Whereas the average person doesn't care until they have to care, until it affects them. Same with the water supply and all the critical infrastructure. We think about that stuff. And yes, maybe sometimes a little bit too much, but I don't want to be caught with my pants down, basically. I mean, if something happens, I want to be as ready as possible. Granted, you can't be completely ready, but I want to be as ready as possible with that stuff. So, and then the economics, I mean, geez, our how much more obvious does that have to be? You know, when thinking about the economics and the willy nilly spending, and it just seems to get worse and worse and worse, and they continue to be able to do this stuff. It's amazing to me.
Well, and it's, right now it's cool, like being a prepper. If you have a cupboard full of cans and a bunch of stuff stocked up and you're rotating it, right now you could rotate some of that out, eat it, and not have to spend the extra money on food. Now, if the economic situation keeps going on, eventually, if you're going to stock yourself back up, you're going to have to spend that money, right? But it gives you a bit of breathing room as the economy's a mess.
Yeah.
Right. So that you're not having to take it full on. And so, yeah, I think it's another reason to be it's a good reason to be a prepper.
Yeah. And it's one of those really obvious reasons. And maybe I'm sure there are a lot of people that don't consider themselves quote unquote preppers. And I could care less if they do or not, as long as they're actually paying attention to this stuff. And maybe, whatever makes them feel comfortable, they're stocking up, they're getting ready for this stuff. That way they're not caught when there's no damn toilet paper on the shelves or there's no milk or bread or any of that stuff. They don't have to go to the grocery store and be part of that mob, because regardless of how many people are interested in this, that if food shortages and that stuff happen, that is going to be, there's going to be a vast majority of people in this country that are completely unprepared. So the more that you can do, even if it's only a couple weeks, that could be what separates you from having to be in a situation like that. So this next one you've got, though, is the big one. And this is the one I think a lot of people, this is kind of like the FEMA stuff and all that. This is when I think a lot of people kind of gravitate towards preparedness because of, and that's natural disasters. I think this is one of those where it's on the news. It happens every year, a number of times a year, depending on what season it is, whether you're talking earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes are a big one, all of that stuff. The droughts, even right now, it's not the, blow your town up, like a hurricane would, but it is a natural disaster. Volcanoes.
But leading to some of that, though, right? The droughts out west. I mean, you see it in Europe and elsewhere, down in South America and Australia. The droughts are really having an impact on forest fires or wildland fires. We were just talking about that earlier, like what to do to prepare for a wildland fire, right? Talking about clearing your brush and talking to the fire department. But you're seeing more and more fires. I just saw this morning, I think I was catching something about some fires in California, right? So,
I saw that too.
This drought, everything's drier when the plants dry out. Not only do they dry out, but remember those environments like Southern California and California, a lot of the plants not only dry out, but they're very oil based. They're really oily plants. So they give off a lot of vapor and they become like they become a torch ready to go up in a lot of cases. So
this is that time of year, right? When everything starts to kick off in California every single year. And then you're going to see.
Well, I mean, you think about it, California, you have the desert, right? You got the Mojave Desert. And so you get the Santa Anas, the Santa Ana winds come out of like Utah and Colorado, all that area up there. And when they come down, they go past Vegas. And so they go across the Mojave Desert. And the Mojave Desert's there because the air that comes in from the ocean is stopped by the Sierra Nevada mountains. And they call it like a rain shadow. So basically there's like hardly ever rainfall out in the Mojave, and you got, that's where Death Valley is. So you have all that that air comes through there, gets dried out, gets superheated. And by the time it hits Southern California, it's like a freight train of, superheated air, and it just dries stuff out. And then you get the fire bugs. And, when I was a kid, they had one of the fires that got started in Los Angeles County. There was some homeless dude found a rabbit, and he wanted to go ahead and cook the rabbit, and he just threw the whole rabbit in the fire without killing it, without cleaning it. And the rabbit caught on fire, took off through the bushes, set all the bushes on fire. You got so many homeless living up in the hills and stuff.
Time to move.
That they'll have fires and stuff. So yeah, and as the city and all over California, as cities have grown, they push up into the side of the hills. They build houses on stilts with brush all around it. Yeah, it's a mess. It's gonna be a mess eventually.
Yeah, and it really depends on your area. What I mean these days, it's pick your poison. Basically, I mean I'm sure that like Montana and North Dakota, South Dakota, not a whole lot going on up there, but all over the country, there's just some sort of natural disaster threat, and I think that's
Well, Montana gets really bad. Montana gets really bad fires, dude. That's the home of the smoke jumpers.
yeah, that's true, huh?
Hey, everyone. Thanks again for watching.
Absolutely. Just as a reminder, you can help us defeat the censors by liking, subscribing, and sharing this or any of our videos. Don't forget to click the link below and visit the website. Over there, you can listen to any of the older podcast episodes and also get on the email list.
And best of all, you can help us give the finger to both the apocalypse and the censors alike.